Physical science is the study of
Candidates, please welcome Mr. Mhlomo. I'm back here with you today on a paper 1 revision session. Remember that on the 1st of November, Tuesday, you'll be writing your final examination for paper 1. So this revision session is aiming at equipping you on how to answer typical questions from previous question papers. So it acts as a guideline to guide you on how you can approach the question paper. There is also even a part of the training that will be allowing you to go there with the strength so that you overcome any nature of question paper on Tuesday. So remember, it's paper 1. We are doing both macroeconomics and economic pursuits. Please join me. Let's see what we have in the pocket for you. This slide simply indicates or shows or give you a summary on how your SBA mark have been calculated in your own school. So it is written 2022 SBA mark calculation. You will remember that in term 1, you did the project out of 50 marks. It was marked and you were given the feedback. You know that. You know the mark you achieved. Still in term 1, you were given a test out of 100 marks. It was marked and you know the outcome of that as an individual. In term 2, there was a task number 3. Assignment, it was out of 50 marks and it was marked, you got the outcome. In this calculation, we don't include your paper 1 and paper 2 for June examination. Task number 4, the case study. That was in term 3. The case study you wrote out of 50 marks. And then you set for your preparatory examination paper 1. You will remember that paper. And then you set for preparatory examination paper 2 out of 150, 150. And then all in all, you have worked out of 550 marks. So now that simply means this is converted to 25%, which is your year mark. So your year mark is 25%, meaning your upcoming examination is out of 300, paper 1, 150, paper 2, 150, converted to 75%. This is the 75%. So after that conversion, what happens? Your SBA mark out of 25 will be added to your exam mark out of 75%. Then that will give you your 100% marks. Just want to give you the highlight on what has been happening since then. So now be aware, you have this 25% in your pocket or less than 25%. We are all working for 75%, meaning these 300 marks will be converted to 75%. So you need to ensure that you achieve according to your target. You need to push and do more. Because working out of 75, you still have a lot to work for here. You can't simply depend on 25%. Remember that there's also mark variance. If your exam mark maybe is more than your SBA for the year, with beyond maybe 10%, there might be a problem. Your SBA might be reduced. So you need to do as if this is the first assessment you are doing in grade 12 this year. You need to push yourself so that you put yourself under the good advantage for this year. This slide is all about topics distribution across paper 1 content. We have question 1, which is our section A. So it combines both the macroeconomics topics and economic pursuits topics. You have your question 2. Your question 2 consists of the circular flow, topic number 1, which is the macroeconomics, business cycles, public sector, and the foreign exchange markets. These are the topics that we need to master if you want to answer question 2. And then question number 3, we have economic pursuits questions. Topics in there. We have the protectionism and free trade. You have economic growth and development, regional development, and indicators which include economic and social indicators. If you want to do or to answer on question 3, these are the topics that we need to master for next week, Tuesday. Question number 4. Question 4 combines both macroeconomics and economic pursuits. That simply means if you want to answer question 4 in your examination, you need to know both macroeconomics topics as well as economic pursuits topics, because it's a combination. There is 20 marks for macro, 20 marks for economic pursuits. And then we continue with the topic distribution on essays or section C. You have your question 5. Here you have your macroeconomics essay. Out of all of these essays listed here, there will be only one essay to appear. You have markets. Remember, markets are there in your circular flow. We have economic paradigm or smoothing the business cycle. And then you have features underpinning forecasting. Both of these are under the business cycles. You have public sector objectives. That is under public sector as a topic. You have reasons for public sector failure. That's a public sector as a topic also. And then we have reasons for foreign or international trade. So remember, these ones are differentiated into demand reasons and supply reasons. So if you want to answer question 5 in the examination, you just have to be a master of these essays. One of them will come into the examination. Ensure that you can be able to answer in these essays. Practice on each essay, expanding your opportunities to be able to get marks in your essay section C. And if you want to answer question 6, these are the topics that you should consider. We have export promotion as an essay. And then we have arguments in favor of protectionism. It's also an essay that are within the same topic. And then we have demand side approach to economic growth and development under economic growth and development. We have economic growth and development policies. And then we have South African handovers to regional development. We have economic indicators. We have social indicators. So you have a choice. Remember, in section C, you choose like you do in section B. Between question 5 and question 6, you need to answer one question. So you need to know where your strength is when you are preparing for examination, and study and ensure that you exhaust those essays. Some people are very good. They can simply do all of these essays for macro and do all of this for economic pursuits. And then they have huge advantage over the question paper in that case. But we know that some of you are struggling. So in that case, you need to exhaust one topic. If you exhaust macroeconomics essays, exhaust them all so that we expand opportunities for you to simply pick up the topic, the essay that will be there and answer it. Having to know all macroeconomics essays will give you advantage over question 5. Having to know all economic pursuit questions, essays, will give you an advantage over question 6. Knowing them all, then you will cruise in the question paper, because even those parts of section C can come as a part of section B, because not all of these topics will be questioned, but there will be one from macro and one from pursuits. So remember, within section A, B, and C, percentage contributed by each section. I want to highlight something here that is very important that you normally ignore. I've been talking about it. Section A consists of 30 marks. These 30 marks contribute 20% in the question paper out of 100%. Section B is out of 80 marks. This is when you are given 3 questions. Question 2, 3, and 4, you answer only 2 questions. These contribute about 53.3% in your examination. And then we have section C, which is out of 40 marks. Remember, you're given 2 questions, question 5 and question 6. And then it contributes about 26.7% in your examination. So all in all, this gives you 100%. So it is very important for you to take all of these sections as serious as you can. Do not undermine section A, like I've been saying. Ensure that you grab these marks. This is too much contribution. And then also, educate yourself. Be a master on answering in section B. Most of you are not getting it correct in data response and 8-mark questions. Some of you think copying the extract will give marks. No, it doesn't give marks. Ensure that you develop the skill that I've been sharing some tactics on how to answer in section B, especially in data response. Ensure that you develop, you improve in there, so that come Tuesday, you go there and grab marks. And then section C, also ensure that in section C, you know or you have an idea of more than 40% for each essay in your economics. Let's say an essay from macroeconomics come in, but you did not exhaust it, but have an idea, know what to do in there. Do not write an essay that have not been questioned. That has been an issue. Do not answer a question that have not been questioned in the examination, because you won't get marks. Ensure that to answer the topic. The simple thing, the definition of the concept. It is very important to give you 2 marks for introduction. As much as you are not sure or you are not having enough information, providing subheadings will simply allow you to get some marks, maximum of 8 because it's a lower order. Listing those subheadings will simply give you credit. Getting 8 marks in there will simply boost you going forward. And then that subheading, have a description where you explain that subheading. Ensure that it worth 2 marks, even more with the example provided. So I'm just emphasizing that you cannot get 0 in section C. Ensure that about all of these essays that are in the examination guideline, you have an idea of each essay. As much as you will be exhausting some, not exhausting some, but have an idea of each essay so that you will be able to grab marks in there. Additional part, it's open. You need to think, understand the question, understand the content, and then answer the question. So it becomes easier because it's not merely dependent on the content, but you must know or have an idea of the content before you to answer the question. And then conclusion, that's when you become critical and wrap off your essay. So section A contribute 20%, section B contribute 53.3%, section C contribute 26.7%. All of these percentages are important for you. Ensure that you push yourself so that it will be easy for you to get marks in there. So approaching the question paper. What is it that you should do to approach the question paper easily? Read each question with understanding before attempting to answer. It is very important that before answering the question, you understand the question statement. You understand the question. Because if you don't understand, what are you answering? What are you saying? What are you responding to? Because whatever you respond to, it means you understood the question, then you are giving the response. So ensure that you understand the question before attempting to answer. And then also avoid early excitement when reading the question statement because you might provide irrelevant information. As you read the question, interpret the question, understand it. If ever the question appear to be very much easy for you, ensure that you read again with understanding before you answer, because that might lead to you forfeiting marks due to the fact that you might end up providing irrelevant information. I'll make an example of one of the previous years where the question paper was question 5. In question 5, the question was saying, discuss all features underpinning focusing, excluding indicators. Then the majority started with indicators, because this thing of all features underpinning focusing, then you stop reading from there, you answer the question, only to find that the first thing that you responded on was not required in the examination. So it is very important for you to read the question with understanding. Avoid being happy or excited with the first reading of the question. Understand it first before answering. Do not guess in section A, and then understand each question statement and relate to the given option. Do not guess. If you are guessing in there, you will lose marks. Those marks are very important. Understand or link or connect those statements. Let's assume that the statement is maybe is a person. There is a person. And then we are given 4 options. Within these 4 options, we have A, B, C, and D. So let's assume maybe A, it can be an animal, any kind of an animal. Maybe it can be a cat. And then B, it's a tree. C, it's a grass. And D, you have a person. This simply means you have to draw the line and link the person to person, then it makes sense. Here in section A 1.1, you are mainly linking that given option to the given question statement. It is very important that you do that correctly to get that 16 marks. Also in 1.2, you do the same. We are linking, if there is a person in 1.2.1, there must be also a person somewhere that should be linked to this person. So avoid linking things that are not relating. Relate things accordingly for you to get those marks. And then as we continue, Read data response with understanding while highlighting important information. Contextualize it. As you read the data response, ensure that you understand and highlight those important points that are given in the data response, because that might assist you as you start to answer questions. Ensure that you contextualize it. Be able to know that this data response belongs to which topic within macroeconomics or which topic within economic pursuit. That will make it easier for you to respond on questions. Improve your ability to link, because the question paper requires the most of linking. If I can give you a simple example, most of our questions in there need you to link. Check question 2. 2.1.2, you must link in there. You need to link those given concepts. There is one action verb and two concepts that should be related. And then you have 2.2.4. 0.4. You link in there. 2.2.5, you also link. So if you can improve the ability of linking, it will be easy for you in here to get questions correct, to get your answers correct. If you can develop the skill of linking, because our question paper desires the most of linking in there. So improve in that aspect, so that it will be easy for you to grab those marks. Be smart when answering application questions. Remember, application questions, we can make an example of 2.5, 3.5, as well as 4.5. Those questions are mostly desiring you to apply. Also additional parts. So you need to be smart. Avoid clamping 2 points into 1 point. Separate points, write them into full sentences. If ever you're evaluating, ensure that your evaluation provides negative effect and the positive effect that can allow you to grab more marks, but write in full sentences. And always start with answers that you are sure they are correct. That will boost you as you go forward with the responding in the question paper. Answer in full sentences on questions that require explanation. Do not list if you have to explain. Simply explain, so that you get credit you deserve. If you list, you won't get enough marks in there. You might know the answer, but if you list, you won't be credited fully. You need to ensure that as you answer the question, you explain where explanation is necessary or required according to mark allocation. And then we continue. Let mark allocation determine time you can spend on each sub-question. Ensure that you look at mark allocation per sub-question. You can't be spending 2 minutes, let's say 5 minutes on responding on 1 mark question. You can't be writing the full paragraph for 1 mark. You can't be writing the full paragraph for 2 marks. Ensure that as you answer, you look at mark allocation, then you provide answers based on marks. And then avoid leaving spaces in section A. Ensure that you answer everything in section A. Avoid answering all 3 questions in section B. Remember, you have a choice in there. You need to answer only 2 questions out of 3. That simply means that you need to answer those 2 questions that you believe you will get more marks on them. And then you leave another one. So answer only 2. Avoid answering all questions, because that will lead to you not being able to complete the whole question paper, due to the fact that you will be spending time on answering the 3rd question, which is unnecessary for you. Avoid answering both questions in section C. It is very important, even if you know both of them, ensure that you answer only one, because we are given a choice in there. You don't have to answer both, you answer only one as per instruction. Be able to analyze and interpret graphs, cartoons, extracts, and data in section B, data response. It is very important for you to develop your skills of analyzing the data response questions. Analyze data response with understanding and then attempt to answer questions. Also be aware that with the given data response, maximum of 2 answers might be found in the data response. The rest is from you and your knowledge of the subject. We continue. Do not write an essay that has not been asked in the examination. I spoke about this. We have seen this happening this year. You are having the skill of answering the question that have not been questioned. Don't answer the question that have not been, the essay that have not been asked. You find the question paper looking for something, you provide something else that you prepared for. No, you cannot examine yourself. Answer the questions that are being questioned in the examination question paper, because answering the wrong question will mean you get 0. Be able to list subheadings for each essay. It is very important. I've spoken about this. Ensure that you can list subheadings for each essay in the examination, in the exam guideline, and also provide some descriptions that can lead to you being able to grab marks in there in section C. What we have noted also, as I'm saying, do not write an essay that has not been asked. I want to warn you, avoid these WhatsApp groups as well as Facebook group that are selling you scope. There is no scope for examination. We don't have a scope. So avoid going through those groups and seeking for the scope. You will be getting wrong information. You even pay for that. It is wrong because it will mislead you. You will stop studying the complete topic that should be done. You will focus on those topics that were given by those people in there for which they are wrong. They don't have a scope. So avoid. It's a warning because you will end up failing due to the fact that you follow some leads that are wrong. Even your educator that does not have a scope. Who will have a scope if your teacher does not have a scope? Avoid going around in groups in Facebook or social media seeking for scopes. Some of you even sell question papers that are not even relevant. So avoid doing that. We have seen that during the year where the question paper comes in and then section C, maybe the question paper needs public sector objectives. You mainly answer reasons for public sector failure. You even provide your own additional part. Where did you get that? It's wrong. You can't be answering the question that has not been questioned. And that's what you get from those people that give you the scope. There's no scope for examination. Study everything. Have a brief description on each subheading for each essay. So after providing a subheading, have a description where you define or whatever that is related to the subheading. Ensure for each essay, know that so that if any essay comes in, you are able to respond. You are able to answer questions. Discuss the relevant content to each subheading. Ensure that the content you provide for each subheading is relevant and correct. Do not take the content for a particular subheading and bring to the other subheading. It will be irrelevant. You will get it wrong. Ensure that the content provided under each subheading is relevant and correct and relating to that particular subheading. Do not list points in additional part, but write in full sentences. Listing is not allowed in there. You can get about 2 marks. So ensure that you write in full sentences. The whole sense of your point should be there in that sentence. Then study strategy. Some of you are struggling with studying. You find the person perusing the book, opening the book across from page 1 to the last page, then you say you have studied. That is not the study. If you study, you prepare for the study. You plan for the study. You bring the relevant concepts around you. You can't simply say, I'm studying the business cycle. What in the business cycle? If you study the business cycle, you will have a particular portion of the business cycle that you need to understand. Avoid perusing the whole chapter if you say you are studying. That is not the study. That is not the study. Should be planned for on time. Information should be collected and be brought around so that when you start to study, and then everything is here. You study that small piece. Once you understand it, you go to the next piece. Stop just paging the textbook across and you say that's a study. That is not a study. Allocate study time according to your performance and your target. You can't be targeting to get 90% in economics and study only for 30 minutes. You need to ensure that you give yourself enough time to study based on your target. Study and assess yourself before using previous question papers. There is this thing of studying. Let's say you are studying fiscal policy. You will study fiscal policy and then you will ask yourself some questions or having some questions that are targeted to be answered. After that, you go to the previous question paper, then you answer questions on the fiscal policy. It will be easy for you. And ensure that your study is surrounded by self-assessment so that you will test if you have understood the concept or not. And avoid studying and doing yourself a favor. When you study, you only assess yourself in the lower order. Ensure that as you assess yourself, it's from lower order, middle order, and higher order. Because every topic we deal with, every concept we deal with can be questioned in all of these different ways. Lower order, middle order, and higher order. If I can make a simple example in there, maybe we talk about leakages. Mention any 2 leakages in the open economy, you list them. Briefly describe the concept leakages. Now that's a definition. Now it's no longer like the lower order. Then after that, how can leakages affect the economy? Now that how question now is at the higher level now. You need to think, understand it, think about it. How does it affect you? Apply now. So it is very important for you, for each concept you are dealing with, to try and assess yourself from lower level, mid level, and high level so that you maximize that topic for the sake of the examination. Use NSC assessment tools to evaluate your study outcomes. In this case, we mean use your examination guidelines. Use also your previous question papers and also check memorandums now to see if you did it right or wrong in case the teacher is not around. Let your study expose your content weaknesses. Don't be frustrated, but use your winning methods. The study might frustrate, we know that, when you are trying to start something but it doesn't get through. But you need to be patient with yourself. Keep on pushing until you get there. If ever you have studied something, then it did not go through, it doesn't mean that you will fail, you won't get it correct. Ensure that frustration is the last thing that happens to you, because once you are frustrated, you stop studying, you do something else. We know when you are frustrated by economics, will go for a home language. You want to go and relax in there. No, focus here. We are writing on Tuesday. You need to ensure that you have the content ready for the question paper. If you are struggling, focus on one main topic between macroeconomics and economic pursuits and study it efficiently. If you discover that I'm not doing well, I have less marks since the beginning of the year, ensure that you focus, like I said, on that set of topics. If you are doing macro, do macroeconomics and exhaust it all so that you can have opportunities to grab marks. And then you do pursuit, you simply do pursuit, but not intensively, because your strength is on macro. That will allow you to escape level 1. We don't need level 1s. We don't need even level 2, actually. So you need to ensure that you score higher. Your teachers have worked very hard to ensure that you guys are ready. So now it's time for you to push yourself. We don't need level 1s. Push yourself. So you must have a working strategy. If ever you are frustrated, or maybe the question paper is in another way, no question paper can be difficult. Be aware that it can be challenging. You need also to challenge the question paper as much as it is challenging. That's why the preparation must be depth. Each topic must be dealt with from lower order, middle order, and higher order. Then you will win in there. And then, but do not leave out the second topic, because you need it for section A and also half of question 4. So you do macro, intensified it, and also do pursuit, so that if you want to answer question 4, you can be able to answer question 4 without any challenge. So this is just the warning. We are writing economics paper 1 on the 1st of November in the morning. And then we have economics paper 2 on the 8th of November, 2022, afternoon session. Remember, afternoon session for you, you will be starting writing like literally on the, at 2 o'clock. You will be writing by 2 o'clock up to 4, because your paper is 2 hours. But remember, you must arrive on time in there. You must have an hour before the commencement of the examination. Then this is the issue. Maths and Maths Lit 4 November 2022. And then Maths and Maths Lit paper 2, 7 November 2022. And then on the 8th of November, there's also something else. The 8th of November 2022, in the morning session, there are some languages that will be written. Now, where does that put you in paper 2? It means you won't have time to prepare for paper 2. Now, it is very important for you to ensure that you prepare for paper 2 intensively on time, because once you go through maths, you won't have time easily for economics. You will be compromising it, I know, for maths and maths. So it is very important that you integrate economics on your study, paper 2, as you go forward. As you reach to maths and maths paper 1, we have a week where there will be a block, there will be a maths lit and maths in there. As much as we will try as educators to be in, but the focus area for you will be on maths and maths lit. And then what happens on Tuesday morning, some of you start with home languages, and then afternoon is economics. So unfairness is there, but you must be strong, because that is the way to go. Use the remaining time to prepare for your exams. Ensure that you prepare thoroughly for your examinations. There will be no miracles. If you don't study, you won't get marks, you won't reach your target. Ensure that your study is intensified. Consult to previous question papers. Have a strategy that is working. Ensure that winning strategy is taken upon, so that you will be able to score marks, because we are all about marks. Never undermine any mark. Every mark is important. Also, don't be like in this manner, whereby you see 2 marks question, maybe for 2.1.1, then you get to be happy, you choose the question. Choose the question according to marks that you are believe or you are sure you will achieve. That's when you do a pre-calculation of marks, looking at questions for each question before you make a choice. Because if you follow that ice-breaking question, list any 2, that will mean now you will go down and stack. Consider last two 8 marks questions for 2.4, 3.4, 4.4, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. Consider intensifying also in them as you check if you can choose the question. That will give you a credit. So, exemplar of questions. This is more like a revision. Now, the first portion was more like a training and giving you guidelines on how to go about in the question paper. This is the lower order. We say mention any two participants in the economy. So let's see, in the closed economy, household or consumers, businesses or firms, government or state. Then if you say foreign sector, you are wrong, because now this is a closed economy, not the open economy. Now, if you can check this, we have mentioned. Now, we can develop this to the middle order. Briefly discuss the role of household in the economy. That's a middle order. And then we go higher now. How can a household contribute on building South African economy? You need to think now. How can they contribute on building economy? Now we are at the highest level. I'm trying to make an example of what I was talking about to say. The question, the content can be assessed in the lower order, the same content in the middle order, and the same content in the higher order. So ensure that as you study, you exhaust the round of all of those so that it will be easy for you to get marks. Mention any two markets in the circular flow. Factor market, product market, financial market, as well as the foreign exchange markets. We continue with the lower order. Mention any two leakages in the circular flow. That's when we have taxation, savings, and payment for imports. You can turn this around to the middle order. Briefly, describe the concept leakages. Higher order. How can leakages affect or impact the economy? Now you have to think the impact of leakages, all of them here. Mention any two injections in the circular flow. Investment spending, government spending, and payment for exports. We continue. Avoid listing more because we need only two. Mention two flows in the circular flow. That's when we have money flow as well as real flow. Avoid saying circular flow. It's not working in there now. It's money flow and the real flow. Mention any two examples of real flow in the circular flow. Then you have flow of goods and services. You have the flow of factors of production. We continue. List any two methods of calculating GDP. That's when we have income method, expenditure method, as well as the production method. Mention any two examples of indirect tax. Value-added tax, ad valorem tax, the sin tax, import taxes or import tariffs. We continue with the lower order. Mention any two instruments of the monetary policy. Repo rate or repurchase rate, cash reserve requirement or reserve requirement ratio, open market transaction, as well as moral suasion or moral persuasion. Mention any two spheres of the government. Local government, provincial government, as well as national government. Then we can turn this around. What is the role of local government? Then we can turn this around to the higher order. How effective have been local government in South Africa on providing public services? You know that from lower, middle, higher. So ensure that you play around, ensure that you deal with this sector so that it will be easy for you to answer questions in there. We continue with the lower order. Mention any two effects of the public sector failure. We have social instability, economic instability, as well as political instability. List any two sub-accounts of the balance of payments. Current account, capital transfer account, as well as financial account. Knowing these from the lower order, you must also be able to know them to the higher order level and the middle order. And then that's a middle order question. How does increase in taxes affect the economy? How does the increase in taxes affect the economy? These are three main concepts that you have to deal with in here. The increase in tax as an action verb, and then increase in taxes affect the economy. You need to link now that if the tax is increasing, how will the economy react? How will the economy be affected? Increase in taxes is detrimental to the economy. It decreases the level of spending and result to low production and economic growth. If ever tax has been increased, that will lead to, if ever it's an indirect tax like VAT, there will be less affordability of goods and services because increase in VAT increases the selling price. If it's a pay-as-you-earn or income tax, that will lead to what? If ever tax has been increased income tax, that will lead to people having less disposable income as a result. There will be lower spending on goods and services, and the economy will be affected negatively. Increased taxes can increase state revenues, which can be used to finance the national budget to improve economic activities. So as taxes are increasing, that can benefit the government because tax revenues by the state will be increasing. High corporate tax increases cost of doing the business and discourage investors into the country's economy. So if ever there's more company tax or corporate tax, that can lead to what? That can simply lead to investors being pessimistic on investing in the country's economy because there is too much government intervention. We continue. What impact does the high savings have on the size of the multiplier? We know that if ever there are more savings, there will be less spending in the economy, so the multiplier will be affected negatively. High level of savings withdraw money from circulation. It decreases the level of spending and result to low size of the multiplier. Why are assets subtracted in the balance of payments? Remember, in there we have assets and liabilities. So why do we subtract assets, not add them? Because we know that assets are always adding more. So let's see. Assets are subtracted in the balance of payments account because they are the outflow of money from the domestic economy. Remember that the money that is flowing into the country is recorded positively and be named as liabilities because the future gains of that amount of money will be enjoyed back in the country of origin. And then assets, we subtract this amount that is flowing out and call it asset because what happens in there? It's an asset because the future benefit of this investment will be benefiting South Africa as a country. So it will be enjoyed in South Africa. That's why we call it an asset because asset accumulates. We continue. Why is the net gold written separate in the current account? The net gold exports. So it is written separate in the current account, not as a merchandise export. Remember, the trade balance consists of physical goods, physical imports and exports. So we have merchandise exports, net gold exports, and merchandise imports. We don't add net gold together with the merchandise export. Why is that is the case? Because of its historical importance. So it is written separate from merchandise export because of its historical importance. The gold was used to determine the value of the currency for each country. So the country with more gold used to have a strong currency. So that's why we regard the gold is recorded separately, not as a part of merchandise exports. How does an overvalued currency impact on the trade balance? Remember, if the currency is overvalued, it is too strong. So that means our exports will be too expensive abroad, and in the long run, in the short run, we can come across more terms of trade, but in the long run, there will be less. So if the currency is overvalued, our export become expensive, which lead to foreign consumers not demanding our goods because they are more expensive, but they seek for alternative products or substitutes. So that will affect our current account negatively. Let's see. An overvalued currency results to trade deficit because it makes export appear more expensive, which decreases the demand, the foreign demand. If they become more expensive, they won't be that much demanded abroad. That's why it affects the current account in the negative way. We continue. How can the appreciated exchange rate affect terms of trade? If the exchange rate have appreciated, meaning is strong, how can that affect terms of trade? The appreciated exchange rate increases the terms of trade. In the short run, remember, in the short run, because it makes export expensive, which increase export earnings. So in the short run, as our currency becomes strong, our terms of trade will be increasing, but in future or in the long run, they won't be increasing because consumers will seek for alternative product or substitutes. So they won't be demanding most of our exports. So there will be decrease in foreign. There will be decrease by foreign consumers. It will decrease. There will be no much demand for our local exported goods and services. So the foreign demand will decline on our local produced goods and services that are exported abroad. So because of that, in the long run, we will be having it negatively because terms of trade will decline due to the fact that consumers will be seeking for substitute goods that can be used to replace our exported goods and services abroad. So the decline in foreign demand will always lead to the decline in terms of trade. Why is it necessary for the country to analyze balance of payments? Why should the country analyze its BOP? It is very important for each nation to analyze its balance of payment because of it helps the country to discover differences between inflows and outflows. The country can be aware of its inflows and outflows. And then also, it is helpful to measure a country's international competitiveness. So it is very important to calculate BOP figures and analyze them so that we can discover if our country is competitiveness abroad or is not competitiveness. And then also analyzing the balance of payment enables a country to use necessary measures such as borrowings if the country is facing what we call a deficit. So knowing figures of BOP and analyzing them is very much helpful because the country can be able to seek for support such as loans from IMF or loans from other world countries so that they can correct BOP disequilibrium. So it is very important for them to be able to, to analyze the balance of payment figures. We continue. What impact does the increase in demand for a currency have on its value? If ever the currency is too demanded, how does that affect its value? Remember, we used to talk about the excess demand and excess supply. The increase in demand for a currency more than the supply is regarded as an excess demand. It leads to the currency depreciating or losing its value. If ever the currency of the country is more demanded by foreign people, that means that that particular currency will be losing its value. It will depreciate. How can interest rate be used to strengthen an undervalued currency? How can Reserve Bank use interest rate to strengthen or to strengthen undervalued currency? The Reserve Bank can decrease interest rate, decrease the demand for domestic currency. Foreign direct investors will be discouraged from investing in if less returns are obtainable. So if ever the Reserve Bank decrease the exchange rate, that will mean foreign investors that are most investing on shares or paper assets will be discouraged because there will be less returns achievable in South Africa if they invest in the country. So that can lead to less demand for our currency abroad. And then data response, exemplars, and 8 marks questions. Study the graph and answer questions that follow. We are given the stats here in a form of graph. These are the interest rates. You can see 2014 down there. The 2016 is there. Then that is 2017 at its highest. And then 2018. And then we have 2020. 2019 is there. And then 2022, slightly at 4%. Which institution is responsible for repo rate in South Africa? Identify a year at which repo rate was at its highest. There will be 2017 here. And then briefly describe the concept nominal interest rate. How does the Sunspot theory concur with changes in interest rates? How can the South African Reserve Bank use repo rate to stimulate the underperforming economy? Let's look at questions and answers now. The institution here is South African Reserve Bank, or SARB. Identify the year. The year was 2017, where interest rates were very high. Briefly describe the concept nominal interest rate. Nominal interest rate is the interest rate that has not been adjusted for inflation. It has not been adjusted. It remains high or inflated. It is not deflated. We'll continue. How does the Sunspot theory concur with changes in the interest rate? Changes in interest rate has a huge impact on money supply. Lowered interest rate increase the money supply and aggregate demand, which might result in inflation if the market has supply constraints. How can South African Reserve Bank use repo rate to stimulate the underperforming economy? We assume that economy is down there at trough or depression. Central bank can decrease repo rate to increase money supply. With more money, people are always tempted to spend. Therefore, borrowings will increase to finance spending and result to high aggregate demand. The increase in demand increases production, real GDP, as well as economic growth. So if ever economy is underperforming, Reserve Bank intervened by decreasing interest rates so that there will be more credit creation and more money supply in the economy. With more money supply, there will always be more demand for goods and services, because as people hold on money, they're always tempted to spend on goods and services. That will act as a greater incentive to businesses to produce more goods and services, which will increase GDP of the country as well as economic growth of the country. Higher order. How can the Department of Finance fiscal policy to stimulate the underperforming economy? Fiscal policy as a whole. Now, remember, fiscal policy talks to this instrument: taxation, government spending, and state debts or borrowings. Increasing government spending. Increasing government spending has a stimulus effect on the economic variables. The government increased its spending on infrastructure investment, social transfers, services, as well as increasing the spending on wages and salaries for public servants. That's how the government used its spending. And then the increase in government spending stimulates aggregate demand, production, and real GDP, as well as economic growth. Taxation decrease. Lower taxes are a great incentive in the economy. If taxes are very low or are reasonable, that becomes a great incentive in the economy. The decrease in indirect tax decreases selling price or prices and increase real income. Decreases in direct taxes such as personal income tax increases the disposable income for household and increase spending. Decreasing corporate tax or company tax creates an opportunity for businesses to expand their investment, which creates more employment opportunities and the level of spending in the economy. That is how the government can use the fiscal policy. The data response. Here you are given the business cycle here, indicating real GDP of the country. Analyzing, this is very important because now we are noting in 2009, we had negative growth of negative 1.5% in the economy. So let's see our questions. The very much notable part is that economy have decreased to be below even zero, going down there. And that year is only 2009. Identify a year with the lowest real gross domestic product. That is 2009. What type of trend line is used on the above economic model? That is downward trend line. Remember, our trend lines can be separated into three. We have the downward trend, we have the upward trend, and the constant trend. If ever it's it's downward, it indicates that economic variables will be decreasing even in the long term. If it's upward, it indicates that economic variables or economic activity will be increasing in future. If it's constant, it indicates that economic variables will not be changing, will remain constant for the given period of time. Briefly describe the concept real gross domestic product. Real GDP refers to figures of GDP that have been adjusted for inflation. Inflation effect has been removed. That is known as a deflated, so as a GDP deflator. How can open market transaction be used to fine-tune the above economic slump? We have seen that economy is down there, it's below even zero. How can we use open market transaction to fine-tune that economic slump? The central bank can buy bonds from commercial banks, that is known as quantitative easing. Remember, to increase money supply within the system in order to increase aggregate demand. So remember that if consumers are demanding more goods and services, that acts as a great motive for whom? For producers to produce more goods and services, which lead to more employment opportunities within businesses and also more production and more GDP. Why is the long downward amplitude not preferred not preferred by economists? If it's long downward, like the one that we have seen, it is not preferred by economists. Long downward amplitude are not preferred in the economy because they indicate the poor economic performance. If the amplitude is downward, very much long, going to what we call a horizontal line and go even beyond that, that simply means the economy is drastically declining. So it is not preferred in the economy because it indicates the poor economic performance. The further decline in economic variables result to negative growth of the economy. We've seen in that graph that the economy declined up to zero, then went beyond zero, which means went below zero, which means now that long downward amplitude went further to the point that there was no production, but everything was negative in the economy. Briefly discuss moving averages. Remember that moving average should be calculated, and also you must be able to plot the graph using moving averages after calculation. A moving average is a tool used to analyze changes that occur in a series of data over a period of time. It is calculated to iron out minor fluctuations that and reveal trends in the business cycles. The data given can be used to calculate moving averages for the business cycle for the past 3 years. Moving average is an analytical tool used to focus the trend of economic performance. So it's a tool that is used to analyze changes that occur in data series, and then it iron out minor fluctuations. It can be calculated over a period of 3 years. One can use 5 years or 7 years. Moving averages is known as also an analytical tool used to focus the trends of economic performance, how the economy has performed. Then we can be able to make predictions of the future. It is a statistical data or data series used by economists, businesses, and government authorities to predict the future economic performance. Getting that information, it will be easy for business people or economists to extrapolate by using known fact to discover unknown information. We continue with moving averages. By using moving averages determined from a given data, economists get a clear picture of the general trends of business cycles. So economists will get a clear picture of what will happen in future and what has happened in the past based on the economy or the business cycle. To calculate moving averages, qualitative method and quantitative methods are used. We have 2 methods for moving averages, qualitative and quantitative. So the quantitative method is based on mathematics, while qualitative method yields research, assumptions, and probabilities. Qualitative method is also known as judgmental method. So the best method to use based on a business cycle is quantitative because it is based on calculations. We discover those trends and then we can make some assumptions other than using qualitative, because qualitative is based on mainly judgments. If information is not made available in terms of numbers, we use qualitative because we don't have enough information to calculate and evaluate. But with enough information based on numbers, we can simply go mathematically and calculate moving averages. So this one becomes the qualitative becomes judgmental because people use their probabilities to decide what might happen, for which is not accurate because there is no fact in there. A qualitative method is appropriate to use when previous data is not available. So one will use qualitative method if ever the previous information or data is not made available when the long-term forecasting is done. So one will always use this method if ever the information is not available or the data in terms of numbers is not made available. They will use their own judgment and probabilities. By calculating moving average, economies or businesses will be able to analyze economic trends over a period of time. So calculating moving averages allow economics people to do what? To be able to analyze and predict even the future and the past of the economic performance. Informed predictions are made when the data series has been used properly. If information is available and is used accordingly, there will be proper predictions in there. We'll continue briefly discuss terms of trade. Remember, terms of trade refers to ratio or index between imports and exports. So the ratio between export prices and import prices is regarded as terms of trade in definition. And then the change in imports prices and export prices affect terms of trade. Terms of trade are used to forecast the foreign trade and countries' international competitiveness. So we use terms of trade to forecast or check if the country is very much competitive or not abroad, and also to forecast the foreign trade for the country. As terms of trade change, they affect export earnings, either negative or positive. The improvement in terms of trade is caused by the increase in export prices or the decrease in import prices. So these are two components that will affect terms of trade. Increase in export prices and decrease in import prices will lead to the improvement of terms of trade. In the long run, high export prices may result in the decrease in sales volume, depending on the price elasticity of the product, and therefore result to less income being generated by exports. So if ever our price have increased on exports, that will mean in the long run, consumers will seek for alternating product that might be used in place of our local product that we have exported. And in that result, there will be less demand for our exports abroad, and consumers will be buying the alternating product, and that will lead to our terms of trade decline. So this table is showing you how to calculate terms of trade. We have year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And then the formula is terms of trade equal to index of export prices to the index of, divided by the index of import prices multiplied by 100. So index of exports, we have 102, 94, 92, 105. So this indicates the decline, this indicates the decline, and there will be an increase. Index of imports, 98, 100, 99. So this means an increase, and this means a decline, and this means the increase again. So calculating terms of trade, we have the first one, year number 1, there it is 102, this is the one, divided by 98, multiplied by 100, we get 104. That is 104. And then year number 2, which is this one, we said 94 divided by 100 times 100. So they decline now, like I've said. So 94 divided by 100 times 100 is 94. So they are declining from 104 to 94. We go further to year number 3. We say 92 divided by 99 multiplied by 100. Then we get what? 93. So it is declining also. And then year number 4, we say 105 divided by 103 times 100. So 105 divided by 103 times 100 equals to 102. So they've started to increase because the index of export prices have increased to 105 from 92. This have led to what? Has led to the increase in our terms of trade. So you must be able to explain terms of trade briefly and also be able to calculate terms of trade. Appreciation of the currency. So appreciation graph, change in supply. So there's no assessment in this one. It's just to remind you how do we come across appreciation of the currency. So we say the market is for rand versus dollars. And then this is the quantity. And then this is the price. This was overturned. So this is rand versus dollars. So in this case, we have original supply, original demand. And then there's the equilibrium where they meet. And then our rand was about 15 rand equals to $1 back then. So because of the increase in supply of our rands in the foreign exchange market, the supply increased from S to S1. As it increased from S to S1, the demand remains lower there, remains constant, doesn't change at 1. So what happens? With the supply of rand increasing more than the demand, we come across what we call an excess supply. So that means our rand is appreciating because now we will be affording $1 with 12 rand than before when we were affording the dollar with how much? With 15 rands. So our rand became strong, it appreciated. Remember, appreciation is the increase in the value of the currency in relation to another country's currency due to market forces. The same graph comes in, and then this is the quantity. And this is the price of rand versus dollars. So at the original point, S is the supply, D is original demand curve, E is original equilibrium. There you go. And then 1 is the original quantity demanded and supplied as for the equilibrium. The supply of rand increases from S to S1. You can see it goes straight to S1, while the demand remains unchanged at D. Quantity of rand supplied increased to 4. While the value of rand appreciates from 15 to 12, meaning now we can afford more of US dollars with less amount than before when we were paying more. Excess supply of rand occurs. So the rand is oversupplied in the market than when it's demanded. And then now we talk about the appreciation when there's a change in demand. That one was indicating the change in supply. So this one indicates the change in demand. So the demand curve will be changing now. Let's see original points, SS, DD, and then we have our equilibrium point up there where they meet. Quantity is 1. So let's simply say this one is Q. This one will be Q1. So what happens? The demand for the rand declines. From D to D1, it goes down there. As the demand for the rand declines, so the rand is no longer under pressure in the foreign exchange market. So we go down to D1, which will lead to our currency appreciating. Because before we used to pay to afford $1 with how much? With 15 rand, but now we're paying 12 rand. So that means our currency have gained the strength. So it is strong enough now. So in this case, we can see the quantity decreasing from Q to Q1 in there. That means we can afford the dollar with less amount of rand than before when we were paying a lot of money. So this is still the excess supply because the supply remains higher, but the demand is declining. So that leads to what we call the appreciation of the currency while there's a change in demand. So the same graph comes in. That is the explanation. Remember, this is rand versus dollar, and then this is the quantity. All right, at original point, S is supply curve, D is the demand curve, E is original equilibrium, 15 is the original value of the rand, 1 is the original quantity demanded and supplied. There you go. And then remember, we said this is Q, this is Q1. And then let's see, the demand for rand decreased from D1, decreased from D to D1. There you go, you see D1 in there, while the supply remains unchanged. Quantity of rand demanded decreased to 1, while the value of rand appreciates from 15 to 12. That's what we have seen. It appreciates from 15 to 12. It gets stronger because now to afford a single dollar, we need to pay 12 rand than before when we were paying 15 rands. So that is known as appreciation. Excess supply for the rand occurs. And then let's look at the depreciation. Remember, depreciation is the decrease in the value of the country's currency in relation to another country's currency because of market forces. So let's look at this one. So this was overturned also. This is quantity. And this becomes rand versus dollars. So what happens here? For us to come across depreciation, there must be excess demand. If there is excess demand, that means the demand for the rand is more than the supply of the rand. So that means there will be a depreciation of the currency. Let's look. Original point. Supply, demand. They meet here at the equilibrium. And then the quantity is how much? Is 1. And then the price is 12, meaning we're affording $1 with 12 rand. So we assume this is Q, this is Q1. And then the demand for South African rand increases in the foreign market, increases to D1. If it increases to D1, supply remains unchanged. That simply means that now there will be excess demand because the demand is more than the supply of rands. And that will lead to our currency becoming weak or losing the strength or depreciating due to the fact that it is over demanded in the global market while we cannot supply most of our currency. So that's why now we will be affording a single dollar by 15 rands. Then before we're affording it by 12 rands. So it have lost its value. It cannot afford the most of the foreign currency. That's what we call a depreciation caused by what we call the excess demand of the currency. So the graph comes in. So we'll take this one. We have the quantity, and then that is the rand versus dollar. And then we have Q and Q1. The excess demand prevails again. There you see original points as like we're repeating ourselves. What happens in there? The demand for rand increased from D to D1, while the supply remains unchanged. The quantity of rands demanded increases to 4, while the value of rand depreciates from 12 to 15. This is the main concern. This means depreciation because now we use indirect approach. As we have to pay 15 rand to afford a single dollar, that means the dollar is becoming expensive and our rand is then depreciated. Excess demand occurs in there. And then it changes in supply. That's when now the supply is declining, but the demand remains high. So let's look at this one. Original point supply, original demand curve. They meet at the equilibrium. The amount is 12. So this is the quantity. And then that becomes rand versus dollar. So what happens? At original point, that is the equilibrium, and the quantity supplied is 4. We say this is Q, this will be Q1. So what has happened? The supply curve shifted back. It declined, the supply for the rand. So we are no longer supplying most of our rand. As the supply for the rand declines, the quantity supplied goes to Q1. It declines to Q1, and then the demand remains unchanged. It remains at Q, which means it's higher. Because of that, there is still an excess demand because the demand remains more than the supply within this gap. So the demand is more than the supply. The supply is up there and the demand is back there. So it means the demand is more than the supply because the demand as for numbers is 4, the supply is 1. So that's an excess demand, which leads to the depreciation of the currency. The currency have lost its value. And then there is the same graph coming in. So our concern is here. A quantity of rand supply decreased to 1, while the value of rand depreciate from 12 to 15. Remember, this is the quantity, and this is the rand versus dollars. So excess demand for rand prevailed in there, resulting to the depreciation of the currency. This is just to give you a highlight. In case you come across the graph in the examination that is all about the change in demand or supply for the currencies, look at it and see if ever there is an excess demand or excess supply. Is there any increase in supply? There will be appreciation. Is there any increase in demand? That will lead to the depreciation. If the supply decreases, that will simply mean that there is a depreciation because the demand becomes more than the supply in that case. But if the demand decreases, that will mean the appreciation because the demand will be low while the supply remains high. And then this is the question based on the foreign exchange market. You are given a price of US dollars versus rand, quantity in millions. So original point is here. We have the supply and the demand. That is equilibrium at 12 units or quantity. The value of rand is 8 rand against the dollar. We pay 8 rand to afford $1. And then the supply declines from S to S1. As the supply declines from S to S1, the quantity supplied goes to 10. And the value of rand depreciates. It goes straight to 9. We need to pay 9 rand to afford a single dollar now. In this case, let's go straight and see our, what we call our diagram. What is the equilibrium quantity? The equilibrium quantity in there, what is it? It equals to 8 rand is to $1. And then what is the result of the decrease in the supply of dollars on the value of rand? If ever the supply of dollars is decreasing, the value of rand depreciated to 1 rand is to 9 rand is to $1, decreased, dropped, or weakened. Briefly describe the term appreciation. Appreciation is an increase in the value of the currency in relation to another country's currency. Accept any other correct relevant answer. What will the impact be of an overvalued currency on the balance of payment? It can lead to the continuous deficit on the current account of the balance of payment. And then why do some countries prefer fixed exchange rate system? It tends to avoid uncertainties with regard to exchange rate. It prevents them from running out of the foreign currency. That was for 10 marks. Then the free trade assessment. How can free trade affect emerging economies? So it is very important that you understand what is meant by free trade. You normally ignore it because there's no essay on free trade. Free trade occurs when there's when countries can trade with one another for free without any trade barriers or restrictions imposed in there. So there will be a simple movement of goods and services from one country to another without some taxes, without some quotas or limits being imposed and some other restrictions being imposed. That is known as a free trade. So how can free trade policy affect emerging economies, those economies that are potentially developing and they are approaching the stage of being developed? Free trade policy opens an opportunity for infant businesses to expand without limitations in the foreign markets. So it gives them opportunity to expand and grow. Free trade promotes efficiency, use of economic resources to infant industries as they produce for local and foreign markets. With the free trade, there will be more production of goods and services because now each business will be producing to serve the local market and the foreign market. High competitiveness caused by free trade improves the level of creativeness and innovation. If ever there is more competition because of the free trade, businesses will be more innovative and they will be creative as infant industries compete in a wider scope. So infant industries will be able to be very much competitiveness and they will be innovative. In that case, that is caused by the fact that they are competing in the wider scope. They are not only competing local, but they are competing locally and abroad. Free trade policies can result to businesses from developing countries, accessing capital easily to support their production. So with the free trade, the movement of capital will not be restricted. There will be no much tariffs imposed on the movement of capital. Therefore, they will easily access capital, which will lead to them being very much productive. And then we continue. How can free trade policy affect emerging economies? Negative. Developing countries are dominated by infant industries. which has less productive capacity, they lack the capital to produce for both local and foreign markets. Industries from emerging economies have less to offer in the international markets as compared to the industrialized economies. So they will always be disadvantaged because they will be competing unfairly with those business of the multinational or those industries of developed countries that are regarded to be multinational industries or strategic industries. Free trade policy have an effect of shutting down the local markets because competition can be too high for local industries, since foreign competitors might be having advantage of economic of scale. So some of them are having subsidies from their governments. Some of them are facing economies of scale. So as they sell their goods locally, they will be selling their goods at a very much lower cost, which will force out our local businesses. The problem of dumping will arise. So there will be dumping occurring because they will get an opportunity from abroad to sell their goods in South Africa that at the lowest possible cost than in their countries of origin. We continue. How can free trade contribute to more efficient economy? If ever there's a free trade, we know that there will always be economic efficiency because the production will always be high and there will be high level of creativeness and innovative. It can contribute by allowing the inflow and outflow of goods and services into the economy, stimulating demand for goods and services, hence creating job opportunities locally, improving the trade balance by making it more favorable. If our local firms will be very much motivated to export their goods, there will be more export going out. So that can simply make our BOP being favorable. Earning the foreign, earning the country foreign capital and accelerating economic growth and economic development. So with the free trade, we'll be able to export more goods and then we'll be earning the foreign currency, which will lead to also will be able to get the capital for the country, which will lead to economic growth and economic development because now there will be income flowing into the country's economy. Improving international relations and stimulating economic integration. With the free trade, there will be good relations between countries, so it will allow us as a country to benefit easily. And then there will also be a developed economic integration between wealthy countries because of the free trade. Improving international competitiveness and expansion of industries. Local industries can get an opportunity to expand in the global market because of the free trade. And they can be very much competitive in the global market because of the free trade. It can allow them to grow if they are willing to grow. Why is the protectionism policy not good for developing countries? Remember protectionism. It occurs when the government uses as measures to protect local industries against the foreign companies. The protectionism is not good for developing countries because retaliation by imposing more tariffs, their imports might have negative impact and that can decrease their net export earnings. If foreign countries can do the same, can retaliate by imposing more tariffs on our exported goods and services, that which can be much negative because we are materials. Protection can therefore result sidelined by most of well-powerful countries. If we protect their own businesses and the economy, that can lead to foreign countries not willing to share with us their capital goods and materials. This can result to even further scarcity of capital. If ever there is a retaliation, we can lack capital that is necessary for us to process our minerals or natural resources as a country. Modern markets are too technical. Protectionism might result to developing countries not getting advantage to access the latest technological trends to expand the local markets. If we are being sidelined as a country, it will be difficult for us to access the latest technical trends that are very much important for us to improve our production and our economy. And then desirable mix. This is economic integration. Briefly discuss economic integration as a measure to promote trade between countries. Remember, 4 of them. Economic integration or cooperation is any combined action taken by 2 or more countries getting together and decision that labor and continue. These are trade protocol that are used in the economic integration. The free trade areas. This occurs. Countries try to form the group and trade with one another by removing all trade restrictions among themselves, but they keep those restrictions non-member countries. Each member country can use any form of protection against non-member country. It is not common. So each country in there can use any method of protecting itself or of tariffs, which is not common to other member countries. And then we continue. Custom union. Now, that's when we develop even further the free trade areas, whereby countries now agree upon same tariff to be imposed on non-member countries, and no country have a power to influence or to change the tariff without any proper discussion with member countries in the trade bloc. That's a custom union. And then we develop further to what we call a common market. This is when now member countries allow the free movement of capital, labor, and money between countries. So between member countries, as members, there will be a free movement of capital, labor, and money between our countries. People can work in any country between member countries. There will be no much restrictions. And then we go to the last one, which is the biggest, which is known as economic monetary union. So economic union or economic monetary union, that's when member countries agree to adopt the single currency and the same central bank for determining monetary policy, like interest rates. So that one is the biggest. Taxes are also made uniform as member countries adopt the common fiscal policy. So these are the forms of economic integration under desirable mix, whereby countries form those trade blocs so that they can make trade easy amongst themselves, while at the same time sidelining non-member countries that are not a part of their trade bloc. And then the import substitution. Evaluate South Africa's import substitution policy. Let's see, increase in industrial growth and development as new industries will be established. Remember that the import substitution occurs when the government use some restrictive policies such as import tariffs, import quotas, and other restrictive measures to prevent the entry of imported goods in South Africa. So if ever there's import substitution, our local industries can get a chance to grow, and some of them can be established. Increase the profits leading to further investments. As our local firms are enjoying profits, there will be more investments locally by local businesses. Tariffs introduced in South Africa can lead to increased demand for local manufactured goods and services. Remember, if ever they impose tariffs on imported goods and services, our local goods might appear relatively cheap. Then local consumers will neglect imported goods and demand local goods because they are affordable and cheap. Import substitution improves industrialization, which increases employment opportunities. With the import substitution, there will be more industries being established because they are motivated by the production from the government. That will lead to more job opportunities being created because of more industries are being established. A decrease in the import has a positive impact on balance of payments as more export than import will take place. So if ever we prevent the entry of imports while we keep on exporting, that will be good for our economy. However, we must know that retaliation always occurs, and not all goods can be substituted. Not all imports can be substituted because, remember, we're a developing country. So in that case, we are lacking some capital goods and technical goods that are necessary for us to process our natural resources. So in that case, implementing won't be much aggressive because we know that we are mainly dependent on other countries in order to finalize or to process our resources to final goods. We will be avoiding that because of retaliation. We continue. Import substitution is restrictive as the choice of goods and services available for consumers may be limited. So in this case, if ever they impose the policy of import substitution, that can lead to consumers' welfare being compromised because they will be having less choices because it will not now be available. As they will be available, they will be expensive. So it does not give them much choice. So it undermines their standards of living. It is not easy to implement policy of import substitution due to unrecorded, informal, or illegal transactions. Some transactions occur. And remember, with the import substitution, some of goods will be flowing into the country illegally. So which will lead to really no tariff received by the government, and our economy will be undermined by those illegal goods that are flowing into the country. It does not necessarily lead to an overall reduction of imports. South Africa has to import capital and intermediate goods to manufacture consumer goods. So, if import substitution does not mean that we are simply blocking all goods, we'll be blocking those goods that we can be able to produce locally as a country. So it does not mean the complete ban of or the complete ban of the block of imports, but it means some of the goods will be sidelined because we can produce them on our own. But the one that we cannot produce on our own cannot be substituted because we depend mostly on foreign countries to provide those goods or the capital to manufacture those goods and services. Inefficient local production may occur because local producers are shielded from international competition. So, since we are not facing that competition which is globally, we might face inefficiency in the production because the production by the government give us the advantage over in the short run. However, we cannot easily grow as local businesses due to the fact that we are not learning anything since globally we are not very much effective due to the fact that government is protecting us as local businesses. The export promotion. And then we are given the extract here. The Directorate is mandated to promote South African value-added goods and services abroad by broadening the export base, increasing market share in targeting high growth markets and sustaining market share in traditional markets. This objective is pursued through the review of and finalization of national export strategy, which is administered by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. These are the questions. Identify the industry that promote the above policy in South Africa. Mention one objective of the export promotion. Briefly describe the concept of export promotion. How can export promotion affect subsidized businesses if the government withdraw its support? What is the impact of export promotion to the balance of payments? Then the source is DTIC, Department of Trade and Communication. And Competition. And then identify the department. It's a Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Mention one objective of export promotion: to promote South Africa value-added goods and services, increasing the market share in targeted high growth area and sustaining market share in traditional markets. Briefly discuss or describe the concept export promotion. The export promotion is the use of subsidy and incentive to support, in support of local exporting businesses to be competitive in the foreign markets. And then continuity. How can export promotion affect subsidized businesses if the government withdraw its support? This is very important. Export promotion creates more reliance on the government. The withdrawal of subsidies and incentive or support can result to affected local businesses failing to compete internationally. If ever the state can intervene, but can simply withdraw its support on those businesses that were formerly supported through export promotion. Those businesses cannot afford to stand the foreign competition or the open competition because they are no longer shielded or supported by the government. And then let's continue. What is the impact of export promotion to the balance of payments? Export promotion increases the outflow of both the visible and invisible exports, which result to more inflow of the currency. The increase in export decreases the current account deficit and the balance of payment account deficit. So it affects it positively because there will be positive trade balance. There will be a trade surplus because exports will be exceeding imports due to the fact that the government have intervened by promoting export through the effect of subsidies as well as incentive and all other measures to promote exports. This is the public sector example essay, example of essay. Public sector objectives. Discuss in detail public sector objectives, 26 marks. And then how successful has the South African government been on achieving its objectives? And then remember, there must be introduction. This is just the sample. Public sector objectives are globally set as a benchmark to be achieved in order to ensure social stability and economic welfare. Achieving this objective successfully declare the country as one of most developing or developed countries. You can even define the public sector with its spheres. Economic growth. Remember, economic growth is a subheading watermark. Remember, economic growth is the increase in productive capacity of the country. That is the main concept in there. We continue. It is reflected in an increase in real GDP or measured by real GDP. So the increase in real GDP will always increase economic growth. Real GDP is the value of goods produced in the country after the effect of inflation has been removed. An increase in real GDP means that the country will have an ability or the ability to supply its people with goods and services. Economic growth continues. To achieve economic growth rate must increase more than population growth rate in the country. Economic growth is measured through as an annual percentage of increase in GDP at constant prices. This will mean that there will be less people that are dependent on the state to satisfy their basic needs because people will be employed. This will make it possible to improve the standard of living of people in the country and reduce poverty. Economic growth continues. The government promotes investment in small businesses, micro and medium enterprises to promote economic growth. Export promotion policy is used to promote local production into the global market. Industrial development policies are used to promote industrial-based production. Policies such as BBBE, the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment, New Growth Path, and GEA, Growth, Employment, and Redistribution, including the ASCESA, are used to promote economic growth in the country. Full employment. It worth 1 mark because there's a subheading in your essay. Remember, full employment occurs when, or let's go according to this. The government's most important priority is to create some decent jobs for the unemployed. They use both macro and microeconomic policies to create an environment that supports more labor in absorption or absorbing activities or labor intensive activities. The state attempts to minimize unemployment by taking action to ensure that all members of the economically active population who would like to work and able to work are employed. Low rates of unemployment also correlate with other positive socio-economic indicators such as lower crime rate and better health standards. We continue with the full employment. Accelerate employment creation through direct employment schemes, targeted subsidies, and more expansionary macroeconomic policies. Support labor-intensive activities, especially in agriculture and light manufacturing. Provide incentive to encourage private sector investment and in the industries which generate large-scale employment. Support knowledge-intensive and capital-intensive sectors in order to maintain competitiveness. Support informal sector to create employment opportunities. The price stability. Remember, price stability means price that do not increase or decrease over time. So price stability means that the price of consumer goods change by small margins only. Price stability is in the best interest of both businesses and consumers. So we need price stability, especially businesses or investors. They need price stability so that they will not face uncertainty. They will be able to guarantee their gains. Also consumers. And then when prices are stable, firms and households are able to anticipate income and expenditure, which enables better planning and accurate budgeting. Stable prices also improve investor confidence and attract direct foreign investments and domestic investors. So it attracts direct foreign investments as well as other domestic investors into the economy. Since the year 2000, South Africa has started to use inflation targeting to monitor inflation, which is between 3 to 6%. Inflation targeting is a monetary policy framework where the central bank announces an explicit inflation target and implements policies to keep it within those limits. The South African Reserve Bank decided in order to keep prices stable, the inflation rate should be kept between 3 to 6%. And then the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, and the PPI, Producer Price Index, is used to determine the level of prices in the economy. If inflation exceeds the upper limit or the highest target, the South African Reserve Bank must consider increasing interest rate to cool down the overheated economy. If inflation drops below the lower limit or target, South African Reserve Bank must reduce interest rate to stimulate the economy so that there will be more credit creation and more demand for goods and services. The exchange rate stability. We know that exchange rate is the currency of one country in relation to another country's currency. So the extreme fluctuations, depreciation and appreciation in the exchange rate create uncertainties. So if ever there is too much appreciation and depreciation, it creates uncertainties in the market and should be limited. Exchange rates influence the flow of goods, services, and capital in the country from other countries. It has a strong impact on balance of payments, inflation, and other macroeconomic variables. Economic equity. Economic equity refers to the economy that does not have much income gap between the rich and the poor. South Africa is one of the world countries that are having high income inequalities in the world. Rich people, capitalism is getting richer while underprivileged people are getting even more poor. Economic inequality results to too few goods flowing to most of the population, while too many goods are flowing to few people in the economy. The South African government uses progressive tax system as a mechanism to redistribution. High income earners are being taxed more, while low income earners are being taxed less. The state redistributes income back to the economy through social security services, social grants like child support grants, disability grants, and old age pensions. Empowerment policies like triple BE and BE, non-cash benefits, are also given to people so that the gap can be closed between rich and the poor. Additional part: how successful has the South African government been on achieving its objectives? The state has failed to achieve most of its objectives, including economic growth, full employment, exchange rate stability, and economic equity. Price stability is one of the macroeconomic objectives that has been achieved in South Africa over the past years. Inflation targeting has led to prices not increasing and decreasing over time. However, in 2022 has recorded a high inflation rate of 7.4%, which has resulted to the government increasing its interest rates. High unemployment and lower economic growth is a major concern in South African economy. These objectives are far from being achieved by the government. South Africa remains as a country with high economic inequalities in the world, according to World Bank statistics in 2022. South African rand remains volatile in the foreign exchange markets because it appreciates and depreciates and have lost value over the past years. Conclusion: the continuous failure to achieve public sector objectives in South Africa has led to severe economic and social unrest, as cost of living increased faster than economic opportunities for the population. That is just the example of the conclusion you can make use of. And then this is another sample of the essay from Economic Pursuits. Discussing detail South Africa's endeavors or in regional development. How successful is the government in promoting industrial development in South Africa? 40 marks all in all. So we'll simply be quick on this one. Regional development refers to policies which are aimed at increasing the economic livelihood of specific areas or regions. Any other correct relevant response is given a mark. And then spatial development initiatives. That is the body. SDI is a policy to promote sustainable industrial development in areas where poverty and unemployment are at its highest. So they are very, very high. That's a spatial development initiative, or SDI. It can be defined as a link between important economic hubs and regions in a country. The intention was to grow SDIs mostly through private sector investment. The state was to enhance inward investment through the granting of incentives. The public-private partnership promotes the economic potential of underdeveloped areas where they form those partnerships. Then we continue. Spatial development initiative continue. In a public-private partnership, or PPP, a private business may provide the capital to build the factory and to buy raw materials and employ labor, while the government provides the capital for infrastructure, e.g. roads and water. There are two types of PPPs, or public-private partnerships, which are compensated differently: unitary payments and user fees. The SDI involved interdepartmental investment strategy that the DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Transport are leading. So it is led by two departments. The government industrial policies strive towards the balance between openness and promoting local competitiveness by opening up the domestic economy to international competition. So it allows our economy to be very much competitive even into the global market. Department of Transport, or DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, is driving force behind industrial and spatial development. Relies on networking with other central provincial government departments, IDC, parastatals like Telkom, Eskom, and Transnet, and research institutions to plan and monitor development. Key policy remains sustainable industrial development in areas where poverty and unemployment are at their highest. And then we continue. SDI focus on high-level support of areas where socio-economic conditions require concentrated government assistance and inherent economic potential exist. SDI goal is to fast-track investment and maximize synergies between various types of investments. objectives of SDI: develop physical infrastructure such as roads and harbors, stimulate economic activities in the underprivileged areas, create employment and stimulate economic growth in underdeveloped areas, develop inherent economic potential in the underdeveloped areas, attract private sector and the foreign direct investment FDIs, establish public-private partnership PPPs. Industrial development zones or IDZs. They are purposely built industrial estate physically enclosed to or linked to seaports and airports. They are in duty-free import areas. This strategy was aimed at making export internationally very much competitive. They focus on creating jobs and promoting exports in the country. Goods produced in these zones should be exported to foreign countries. As services are provided from outside, the economy in the areas should be stimulated. An ITZ offers a world-class infrastructure, enjoys zero rate of VAT on supplies from South African sources, and reduced taxation on some products. We continue with ITZ. ITZ were located to benefit, investing in companies through support, accessing to transport for exporting purposes, products produced for export by waiving import duties, skills training for employees by providing subsidies. We continue with ITZ. Each ITZ is designed to do the following: provide location for establishment of strategic investments, promote and develop links between domestic and zone-based industries, enable exploitation of resource-intensive industries. Special Economic Zones, SEZ. It creates a basis for a broader range of industrial parks and provide economic infrastructure to promote employment. Geographically demarcated area where specific economic activities are being identified to develop by the government. These areas may enjoy incentives such as tax relief and support system to promote industrial development. We continue with SEZ. There are plans to reduce tax to 15% as an incentive to attract new industries. The aim of creating SEZ is to attract only new businesses which are developing a new product line, businesses which are expanding their volume. The DTI has indicated that the existing ITZ, where special tax incentives do not apply, would be graduated into SEZs or will be converted to SEZ. The corridors. Corridors in South Africa are special areas that offer specific advantages to mining, manufacturing, and other businesses. These refer to the track of land that form the passageway to allow access from one point to another. The advantages also include the presence of existing infrastructure and the specialization of products or service. These corridors are development areas within South Africa and are the development priorities of all development agencies. The Department of Trade and Industry provides help to support the development corridors, e.g. Maputo Corridor, that starts in Gauteng and extends through Mpumalanga to the Maputo port, offers opportunity to the transport industry. Remember that there are two types of corridors within South Africa and corridors beyond South Africa or South African borders. So, additional part, the government has promoted industrial development by implementing GEAR, which focuses on promoting growth in the economy, although it hasn't been successful because real GDP growth is not at the expected levels. The New Growth Pathway, NGP, which focuses on improving certain skills which would attract global businesses and ensure long-term economic growth, has not seen which are unemployed. National Industrial Policy Framework, NIPF, as an appropriate policy with the best practice, although hindered by unemployment problem. We continue. Spending huge amounts on improvement of infrastructure through the SDI, for example, maintaining, improving, expanding infrastructure, access to suitable, modern, reliable, effective, efficient infrastructure and services. The creation of jobs was not enough to reduce unemployment. Implementation of ITZ, although some ITZ growth have been slow due to incentive not being attractive enough to establish businesses. Introducing SEZ to address the negative elements of ITZ by promoting additional incentives. Promoting small businesses development that has been reasonably successful due to the improved access to finance and capital, which has promoted internal opportunities as well as efficient and competitive markets. Promoting regional development, although it is still uneven because it is still concentrated in major metropolitans. Any other correct and relevant response was given a mark. And then conclusion of the essay. It's just an example. It is the ultimate responsibility for the government to ensure that proper and effective policies and policy direction is given on the entire development of the country. Every area in the country should be considered as for development and growth. The industrial sector is earmarked as safety, a safety net for millions of jobless people in the rural areas. Our essay ends here. Additional part worth 2 marks. So these were just examples of essays picking from macro and economic pursuit. Even on the 31st, we will be here. We'll be doing the same thing, but they will be dealing with the different content now in different questioning order, different essays also. Keep on studying. And then our lesson ends here. And I thank you. All I can say, I would say keep on studying. Ensure that you are familiar with economics questions using previous question papers. Seek for assistance where you are struggling. Ensure that you employ all strategies that are necessary for you to master the examination on the 1st of November 2022. I wish you all the best. I thank you.